Hello and welcome to Kate's Grace Podcast. I'm your host, Kate. Now, this is the first ever episode of Kate's Grace Podcast, and I'm so excited to start. Before we jump into today's topics, I'd like to give a shout out to my cousin Michael, who made the wonderful theme song for the podcast. He's been such a great help in this, and his song that he created is so cool. It would really be encouraging for him and me if you could go follow him on Instagram. I'll leave a link to it down below. Also, if you have any questions or comments at all during this podcast, I also have an Instagram account. If you can go follow me at KateTheGreats_podcast on Instagram. DM me with any questions or comments you may have. Alright, so today I'm going to talk about writing sprints. I don't know about you, but for me, I struggle with word count a lot. And being productive in your writing can be challenging at times as well. But writing sprints have helped me a lot, so what exactly is a writing sprint? Well, writing sprints are when you set a timer, and during that time, you try to write as many words as you possibly can in that amount of time you set for yourself. They can be anywhere from a few minutes to a couple hours, but I find that around 15 minutes is where it's at. That's what I usually use, because any longer, I'll get distracted and not end up writing anything. Writing sprints are often done with other people, though you can also do them alone. But writing them with other people does give you a sense of obligation to do nothing but write during the time, because other people are doing it as well. Although writing sprints are mostly used for writing, they can also be used for reading, schoolwork, and many other things such as chores. So exactly how are they used? Well, writing sprints are used to help with focus and productivity. When you have a set amount of time to complete a task, it becomes the center of your focus, which in turn allows you to push all distractions aside to complete that task without getting distracted. Again, I believe that doing writing sprints with other people is the most effective way because it really helps to narrow your focus to that one thing. When I do them alone, I find it hard to stay focused on exactly what I'm doing because for me, concentration has always been a problem, and I get distracted by a lot of different things, from my siblings running around to maybe if I'm listening to music, I'll get distracted by that. Writing sprints are also helpful if you don't have much time to write for. You can set only a few minutes during your work break or before lunch, and you can get quite a few words out that way. And because writing sprints are so short, oftentimes you can do them literally anywhere. Now, this year has been quite hard on a lot of us, but I found that with all the other distractions around me, it's been hard for me to not find time, but make the time to write. So since I started writing, I have always struggled with word counts. I am an underwriter, meaning that when drafting a novel, I have a tough time reaching the lofty goals and often fall short of the 50 to 70,000 words that make up the average fantasy novel, which is the genre that I mainly focus on. But writing sprints have really helped to change that. By setting a goal of as many words as possible, often in a short amount of time, I have been able to transcend the normal amount of words that I usually get out in the same amount of time without the writing sprint. I've been able to reach over 1,000 words per chapter now, which is really awesome seeing as how few words I used to write in my other ones. With the help of writing sprints, I am writing more than I ever have before, and it is also super fun now. Now, exactly how I use them is a bit different from other people, but I've begun to use writing sprints more and more this year. Because we moved this year, it was hard for me to find time and also the motivation to write, because moving is both physically and mentally draining. When I began to use writing sprints, it helped push me back into the routine of writing. A few months ago, while I was an intern living, I found a part of YouTube that really helped me to start writing again. While I was in my bed searching for live writing sprints, I came across Bree's writing sprints called Writing and Wine NaNoWriMo Writing Sprints. I joined in, and they were all so welcoming. It was kind of funny because some of them were a bit loopy at the time, but it was such a wonderful time. And right after the sprint, I went around and subscribed to all the ladies who were there. I'm so lucky I have found them. They have made such a huge impact on my writing, and I'm so grateful for them. I really encourage you all to check them out, and I'll leave links to their channels in the show notes. So I've been joining in as many live streams of theirs as I can, and they have really pushed me to write and tell more of my stories. Now, there were a lot of the ladies there, so I'm not going to be able to name them all, but a few of them were Madeline Morgan, Autumn, Ashleigh, and Brook writes, so why exactly are writing sprints helpful? Well, writing sprints are helpful in many aspects of writing, such as word counts and productivity. When doing a writing sprint, you end up focusing on your writing and writing only, which helps with word count as well as productivity. Writing sprints help to narrow your focus on your story, and it can help you plan further into the future of where your characters are supposed to go. Because you have a limited amount of time, you're almost rushing the sentences, which for me helps with the flow. Now, I really encourage you guys to try writing sprints, whether it's by yourself or with other people, for they have really helped me with my word count and productivity in my writing. Now, before I jump into the short story that I've written for you guys, I'd just like to say a big thank you to all those of my family who have supported me in my journey and this podcast. And thank you guys so much, and you guys mean so much to me. Now, I thought I'd share with you a short story that I wrote a few days ago. I'm very proud of this story that I wrote. I used a prompt from one of my prompt books that I own, and I am so happy with how it turned out. I'm really excited about this story, so I hope you enjoy, and here it is. The Boy Next Door. A stranger moved in next door without us noticing. He seemed to have brought no luggage, no furniture, no boxes, nothing. Nothing but the dark suit that was all he wore as far as I could tell. I never heard him utter a word until the day I found him at our doorstep. Earlier that day, while I was at school in my math class, I had a strange feeling in my gut. It had just started out of nowhere. After math, I headed to lunch and tried to ignore the feeling, but it would not dissipate. I sat in my usual spot in the corner of the cafeteria, alone. Me and my family had lived here for 2 years, but I still had not made any friends. Sure, I had a group of people I hung out with occasionally, but nevertheless, I had no one to eat lunch with. The rest of the day, the pit in my stomach continued to grow. On my way home, I took the trail that led to my house behind the school. Today it was snowing, and all the world seemed white. My heavy boots dragged through the snow as I made my way up to my doorstep. Then a ping shook through my body. I turned to my left and found myself locking eyes with a boy who had just moved in next door. He was still in the same black suit I'd seen him wear every time I saw him. I turned back to my house and rushed inside, but as I turned, I swore I saw him grin as I walked inside. Once inside, I shuddered. My parents were still at work, which caused me to worry. What if the boy came to my house? And why did it look like he was waiting for me? Since he had moved in, I had not seen his parents nor anyone else who might live with him. I threw my book bag in the entrance and pulled my snow boots off as fast as I could. Then rushing back to the door, I locked it. I was not taking any chances. The way the boy had stared at me was unnerving, and I was already paranoid. After locking the front door, I went around my house shutting curtains and locking windows and doors. I knew I was overreacting, but I could not shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. Once I felt as safe as I could have been at that moment, I went to my room and changed into my comfort clothing, a heavy sweater, baggy jeans, and my favorite green beanie that matched my eyes. Then I returned to the kitchen. Checking the clock, I noted that there was 3 hours until my parents got home. Again, I tried to shake the feeling of paranoia that continued to haunt me, but it just would not leave. To distract myself, I decided to try and complete my homework, but I could not focus. The paranoia was consuming my brain and shutting down my thoughts. Then it happened. The doorbell rang. I had been dreading the sound of the sweet ding, 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 but it came nonetheless. I did not want to answer it, but what if it was one of my parents? They had been notorious for leaving their key at home when they went to work. Cautiously, I crept to the front door and pushed the curtain of the window beside it to see if I could spot who was outside. A little scream left my mouth as I spotted him. The boy was there, at my doorstep. I left the curtain and hid behind the door. Surely he had seen me. What do I do? What do I do? I whimpered and began to breathe hard. The pit in my stomach told me something was wrong and not to open the door. So gathering all the courage I had, I left the door and scurried up the stairs to my bedroom. Crossing to my dresser, I grabbed my wooden sword that I had gotten as a child and crawled onto my bed. Why is he here? I asked myself. I was starting to lose my mind. Then a bang echoed through the house, and I knew he was in. Not knowing what else to do, I went to my closet and grabbed my emergency ladder that I kept in there in case of a fire. As I was opening the box to get the ladder out, I heard footsteps ascending the stairs. Now I was starting to panic. My hands fumbled with the packaging. I knew I should have gotten the ladder ready when I first got it, but I had been lazy and just stuck it in the closet. I could hear the boy opening doors and closets down the hall. It was only a matter of time before he reached my room. I was just about to open the window to climb out when my door flew open, and there he was. The boy from next door looked at me and grinned. His dark hair matched his black suit. He crossed my room and stood in front of me. "Who are you?" I cried, unable to do anything to get away now that he was there. "I am Death. Your time is up," the boy said, as his unnatural red eyes flashed. Then grabbing me by the front of my sweater, he kissed me. When Death let me go, I fell to my bed choking, as he smiled and watched me reel in agony by my bed. My airway shut, and I tried to cling to life, but it was no use. The last thing I saw was Death's evil grin as my soul left my body. I was gone. So yeah, that was my story. I'm very curious to see what you all thought of it, and as I said before, you can follow me on Instagram at KateTheGreats_podcast if you have any questions or comments. I'd really like to know what you all thought of the story, and it'd be very encouraging to get feedback. Honestly, I was a little bit embarrassed by it at first, but I think I did a really good job. As soon as I got the prompt, which was the first few sentences of it, I was like, oh, I got a great idea for this. And so I just wrote it. Before I leave, I have a few questions for you, and I also have some questions that I received for myself by some of my cousins. So some of my cousins and family members asked, what do I do in my free time is one of the questions. So most of the time it's either writing or reading, but I'm also big in crafting, such as I like to draw, paint, sew. I like to do a lot of creative things. But mostly, the thing that I always come back to is crochet. So I crochet a lot of hats. I've crocheted about 3 blankets. Creatures, I've made a dragon. Of course, a dragon. Dragons are my favorite animal, if you didn't know. I've crocheted many other things as well. I've crocheted a hippocampus. Mostly fantasy creatures and such. Anyway, that's what I like to do in my free time. And the second question I got from one of my cousins was, how long does it take to draw my dragons? So if you don't know, I draw dragons, and I draw a lot of dragons. So if you check out my Instagram at KateTheGreats_podcast on Instagram, you'll see my later posts are all art related, and they're all dragons. I hope to start a Redbubble account, which is a print-on-demand shop where I'll sell t-shirts and such with my dragons that I've drawn on them. So, to answer the question, how long does it take to draw one of my dragons? It takes between 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time I spend on it, because I use like Copic markers and Ohuhu markers for coloring them in, but I think the longest one has ever taken me was like maybe 2 hours, because if you look in my feed, I turned some characters into a dragon. There was 4 of them on there. That one took quite a while to do. So yeah, that's my answer to the question. Between 30 minutes to a few hours. Now, before I sign off, I'd like to ask you guys some questions. So I find it very important to know this about all the people I meet, and that is, what is your favorite color? It's very important to me. My favorite color is red, and I also really like slate, which is kind of a grayish blue. And yeah, and another question for you guys is, what do you do in your free time? I'm curious to get to know you guys. And last but not least is my question, what are some topics you'd like me to discuss? I'm curious to see what else you'd like me to talk about, whether it's writing related or about fandoms or my opinions on something. I'd really like to know. So thank you all for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. And as always, make sure to pursue your passions, because one day your dream may just become your reality. So goodbye, and I'll see you guys later.